The first words that tore through the cabin hit like a slap. "Hey, you. Yeah, you, the black woman pretending she belongs up here. Get your worthless behind out of this row before I drag you myself." Heads snapped up. Conversations died. And standing in the aisle like he owned the air itself was Captain Bradley Knox, 45. Pale-skinned, sharp jaw, cold blue eyes full of superiority. A man who had spent years believing his uniform made him untouchable. A man whose smile for wealthy white passengers evaporated the moment he laid eyes on someone he considered less. His gaze locked on Amara Holt, the woman he'd decided to humiliate. Amara Holt, 40, black, soft brown skin, intelligent dark eyes, dressed in a simple gray sweater, jeans, and carrying an old leather Bible in her hand, looked up slowly from her seat. To the world, she was just a quiet woman traveling alone. No one knew she was the billionaire owner of the entire charter fleet. No one knew she built the company from the ground up. No one knew she was flying today to grieve her late mother. And Bradley Knox, arrogant, entitled, power drunk, treated her like dirt the moment he saw her next to a wealthy white VIP businessman. He stepped closer, sneering. "Get up. Don't make me repeat myself. People like you sit in the back. You're blocking premium seats for paying customers who actually matter." Gasps. A phone recording beeped. Someone whispered, "Did he really just say that?" Amara's fingers tightened on the Bible in her lap. Knox leaned in until his voice dripped venom only she could hear. "Don't look shocked. You think the front of my plane is some charity program? Move. Your kind always causes problems, and I'm not dealing with it today." Her heart pounded, her throat burned, her grief twisted with humiliation. But Amara didn't rise. Not yet. Her mother's voice echoed in her memory, the same words she had underlined decades ago. "Be strong and courageous. Do not be afraid, for the Lord your God is with you wherever you go." Joshua 1:9. Courage, not the loud kind, the kind that holds still even when the world tries to push you into the shadows. She lifted her eyes and met his. "I'm seated correctly," she said calmly. "There must be some—" Knox laughed sharply, cutting her off with a dismissive wave. "You're seated where? In a seat you didn't earn? In a section you don't belong in? Lady, spare me. I've flown long enough to spot trouble passengers before they start crying racism." Passengers flinched at the word. Some stared at their shoes. Some pretended to read emails. No one dared step in. Knox tapped the nameplate on his chest. "See this? I'm the captain. I decide where you sit. And you? You're going to stop embarrassing yourself and get your backside to the back row I assigned you. Now, before I upgrade you right off this plane entirely." The businessman beside her shifted away, as if disgust might be contagious. Humiliation coated her skin like ash. Amara swallowed hard. This was her mother's favorite route, the one they used to take every year. Now she was being degraded on it by a man who had no idea who she was. She stood slowly, not out of obedience, but out of quiet strategy. Her voice was steady, even gentle. "There's no need to threaten me, I'll move." Knox smirked triumphantly. "Of course you will. Smart girl. Should have known your place from the start." The cabin went silent at the phrase. A woman near the window covered her mouth in shock. A teenager whispered, "This is messed up." Someone else whispered, "Why doesn't she say who she is?" But Amara walked down the aisle in silence, Bible pressed to her chest, every step echoing like betrayal. With each footstep, she repeated her mother's verse inside her mind. "Be strong. Be courageous. The Lord your God is with you." Knox followed her with his eyes, satisfaction gleaming. To him, the humiliation was complete. To her, the storm had just begun. She slid into the cramped middle seat he assigned, right beside the bathroom, and folded her hands, breathing through the sting. No one would disrespect her mother's memory like this. No one would violate human dignity under her watch. No pilot, no crew, no system she built. She sat silently as Knox marched back to the cockpit, barking orders over his shoulder. "Next time, don't make me waste my time correcting your attitude." The door slammed shut, The cabin vibrated with anger that no one dared voice. Amara closed her eyes. Courage wasn't about the seat she was forced into. It was about what she would rise to do after this flight landed. If you have ever felt humiliated, silenced, or pushed aside when you did nothing wrong, then what happens next with Amara Holt will make you stand up, speak up, and believe again. Don't forget to like and subscribe and stay with Dignity Voices to follow the journey. The Lie Captain Knox files will shock you. The plane touched down with a gentle shudder, but Amara Holt felt none of the softness in the landing. Her humiliation from the flight still burned like a welt across her spirit. She remained in the cramped middle seat beside the bathroom until the last passenger stepped off, partly because Knox insisted she wait, and partly because she needed the aisle to herself while she gathered her breath in dignity. The cabin emptied. The overhead lights brightened, and as Amara finally stood, the flight attendant nearest her offered a stiff, rehearsed smile. "Ma'am, the captain would like you to exit quietly. He's requested that you not speak to anyone on your way out." Requested, threatened. It all blended together. Amara gave no reaction. She simply walked off the plane, each step slow, controlled, and unbearably heavy. Her heels clicked down the jet bridge like a funeral procession. Her mother had been gone 3 months now, yet today felt like losing her all over again. When Amara stepped into the terminal, she expected at least one crew member to say something kind, or apologetic, or even human. Instead, Captain Bradley Knox stood waiting with folded arms, a smirk carved across his face. "Ms. Holt," he said in an exaggerated, mocking politeness. "A moment of your time." She kept walking. He blocked her path. "You caused a disturbance, disobeyed a seating directive, and refused to comply with safety instructions. I filed an incident report. You'll be hearing from the airline." Amara stopped cold. "An incident report?" Knox shrugged casually, like it was standard paperwork. "You seemed confused about where you were allowed to sit. And emotional. Very emotional. I made sure corporate knows you were the problem, not me." He smiled wider, leaning in so only she could hear. "You think recording me helps? Please. I've been doing this 30 years. I know how to write reports that make people like you disappear." There it was again. People like you, not passengers, not customers, not humans. Just people who didn't matter. The terminal felt suddenly colder. A few passengers hovered near the gate, whispering. A couple who had witnessed everything shifted uncomfortably, clearly torn between stepping forward and avoiding conflict. But Knox didn't care who heard. He lifted a folder, a thick one. "Everything's in here. You were aggressive, uncooperative, and verbally confrontational. I even added that you tried to incite other passengers. That always gets corporate nervous." He chuckled. "Trust me, you're done flying with us." Amara inhaled sharply, gripping her Bible until her knuckles whitened. She didn't shout. She didn't argue. She didn't need to, because all she needed to do was watch. And remember, and act later. With a single steady breath, she answered, "Thank you for informing me, Captain Knox." Her calmness disarmed him for a moment, but not enough to silence his arrogance. "Oh, and don't bother calling corporate," he added smugly. "PR already knows about you. They're on my side. They usually are." She blinked. PR? Her own team? The team she built? Knox misread her expression as fear and leaned closer. "They'll handle the press. We'll make sure no one believes your little story." With that, he turned and strutted down the terminal like a man who had won. But Amara was not a woman who lost. Not anymore. 2 hours later, inside the airline's main operations building, Knox's lies had already done their damage. Amara entered the building quietly, avoiding attention. She used the side elevator she always used when visiting headquarters anonymously. On the top floor, she walked straight into the PR office, her PR office, and was greeted by 2 managers she had personally hired. But they didn't greet her with warmth. They didn't ask if she was all right. No one even offered her a seat. "Ms. Holt, unfortunately, we've reviewed the captain's report," said Marlene, the PR director. "It paints you as uncooperative." Another manager chimed in, not even hiding their indifference. "And, well, Captain Knox is highly respected. His account carries weight." The betrayal stung deeper than the captain's insults. Her own employees believed a man who degraded her in front of dozens of witnesses because he wrote a polished report. She lowered her voice. "What about the passenger footage?" The PR director's smile tightened. "We're discouraging anyone from posting it. We're controlling the narrative." Controlling, manipulating, erasing. Amara's heartbeat went still. "You're protecting him," she said softly. "We're protecting the airline," Marlene corrected stiffly, "which means preventing a story that could make us look discriminatory." Amara stared, stunned at the irony. Preventing a story about discrimination by enabling the discriminator. PR slid a folder across the table. "We're prepared to issue a statement labeling you as a disruptive traveler if this escalates." The exact phrase Knox had used. They were in sync, all of them. Her chest tightened. Her airline, her company, her people had just chosen to stand with racism rather than risk discomfort. In that moment, she felt the full weight of betrayal, not from enemies, but from those she trusted. Amara closed the folder gently. "Thank you for your honesty," she said in a tone calm enough to frighten them. And she walked out. Her steps were slow, controlled, purpose sharpening with each stride, because the truth had just settled deep inside her bones. She wasn't just dealing with one hateful pilot. She was dealing with a system that protected him, a system she built, but would tear down and rebuild with her own hands. Night draped itself over the airline's private hangar like a heavy velvet curtain. The massive metal structure hummed with distant generators, rows of idle jets gleaming under soft overhead lights. Most employees had gone home hours ago. Only the quiet echo of Amara Holt's footsteps moved through the cavernous space. She walked slowly, deliberately, her fingers brushing along the cold metal of an aircraft she once felt proud to own. Today, she felt betrayed by the very wings she built. Her mother had always told her, "When the world turns on you, don't rush. Stillness makes truth louder." So she walked in stillness. Amara stopped beside the plane she'd flown earlier, the one where Captain Bradley Knox had humiliated her, shoved her dignity into a seat beside the bathroom, then filed a report to destroy her credibility. She stared up at the dark cockpit windows. A pilot's throne, a bully's shelter. Not for long. She set down her leather bag, pulled out her laptop, and connected it to the aircraft data terminal. With her owner-level credentials, she had access to black box data, cabin recordings, and internal system logs most executives didn't even know existed. Tonight, she wouldn't act as the silent passenger Knox degraded. Tonight, she was the woman who owned every inch of this plane. Video files loaded. She scrubbed through footage from earlier flights. She expected to see bad behavior occasionally. Every company had its flaws. But within minutes, her stomach twisted. There was a woman, black, mid-50s, being ordered to switch seats for safety reasons. Then a young black man being moved to the back for balance. Then a black family being split up due to spacing requirements. It wasn't occasional. It was patterned. It was deliberate. And every single time, the pilot issuing the order was Captain Bradley Knox. Amara exhaled a slow, trembling breath. This wasn't bias. It was a habit. A habit built on power, protected by silence, strengthened by a system too cowardly to call him out. Her chest tightened with anger as she clicked through the reports for those flights. Every single one contained the same wording Knox used about her. Passenger was emotional, confrontational, uncooperative. He'd perfected this script. He'd used it for years, and no one questioned him. No one. Except her. She paused the footage, staring at the frozen image of a young black man looking confused and embarrassed as he was sent to the back of the plane. Her voice cracked. This could have been my brother, my cousin, me when I was 17. She pressed a hand against her forehead, fighting the rising heat in her face. Then she whispered a single sentence to the empty hangar. He thinks he can erase us. Amara's phone buzzed. A message popped up from an anonymous employee. Are you okay? I saw what happened today. You're not the first. Another message followed. If you're looking into Knox, please, don't give up. We all saw, but no one can speak. Her throat tightened. She typed one reply. Tell me everything you know. Nothing will happen to you. 5 seconds later, another message arrived, this time with a video attachment. She opened it. It showed Knox berating a black flight attendant in the galley. The man looked terrified. Knox hissed, "You smile too much at the economy crowd. People like you should be grateful to even work first class, but don't get comfortable." Her hands curled into fists. This wasn't bias. It was cruelty. Organized, consistent cruelty. And everyone had been too afraid to challenge him. Everyone except her mother. If she were alive. A fresh wave of grief swept through Amara, catching her off guard. Her mother's gentle voice felt so close again, as though she stood beside her. Amara wiped her eyes, inhaled, and reached for the second object always inside her bag. Her mother's Bible. The same cracked, worn leather cover she clutched on the flight. She opened it to a familiar page her mother marked decades ago. One Amara had leaned on in every moment she felt the world pressing against her. Let us run with endurance, the race that is set before us. Hebrews 12:1. Endurance. Not the glamorous kind, not the easy kind, the kind forged in humiliation, held together by purpose. She whispered into the silent hangar, "Mother, I hear you. I'll endure." Her voice echoed softly against the metal walls. But endurance did not mean suffering. It meant surviving long enough to change what caused the suffering. And tonight, that change began. Amara returned to the laptop. She pulled internal HR files, reports, complaints, investigations. What she found made her heart fracture. Passenger complaints about Knox dated back 8 years. Flight attendants had filed concerns about his conduct. 2 junior pilots had reported him for bias-driven safety decisions. But every complaint had one thing in common. Case closed. Lack of evidence. No further action. Amara whispered bitterly, because PR buried them. Because HR feared him. Because leadership turned their heads. Because she had trusted the people beneath her to uphold the values she built. Instead, they had protected the man doing the most harm. Her eyes burned, not with tears, but with clarity. A new resolve flowed through her limbs like fire. If the system protected Knox, she would rebuild the system. If executives feared the truth, she would put the truth on screens they couldn't escape. If PR wanted to control the narrative, she would destroy their narrative and create the true one. Tonight wasn't just an audit. It was the beginning of a war. One fought not with aggression, but with the power she'd earned, the power she'd hidden, the power Knox never imagined she possessed. Amara closed her laptop, lifted her Bible, and whispered, "Endurance and justice." She walked out of the hangar, head high, step steady. The woman Knox tried to erase was now the woman preparing to erase every lie he'd ever written. And the first name she would remove from her airline story was his. If you have ever uncovered a truth that shook you or realized someone abused power for years, then what Amara discovers next will make your heart burn for justice. Don't forget to like and subscribe and stay with Dignity Voices to follow her fight. Morning light poured through the glass walls of the executive tower like a spotlight, bright, accusing, impossible to hide beneath. Amara Holt stepped into the building with a calmness that came not from peace, but from focus, sharpened by betrayal. Her hair, pulled back neatly, contrasted with the fire simmering inside her chest. Today wasn't about emotional reaction. Today was about proof, and she carried enough of it to shatter the company's polished image. She scanned her ID at the private elevator. The doors slid shut. The metal chamber hummed. As she rose floor by floor, her expression remained unreadable, but her purpose had never been clearer. This wasn't one bad pilot. This was a system that had rotted beneath her feet while she was too busy healing from her mother's passing to notice. She would notice everything now. On the top floor, the human resources wing buzzed with quiet morning routine, typing, coffee pours, soft chatter. But the moment Amara walked in, silence rippled through the office like wind through a field. No one knew she owned the company. To them, she was just the disruptive woman from yesterday's flight. She walked straight toward the director of HR, a slim man named Jacob Windsor, early 50s, spectacles, nervous eyes that always darted before they spoke. He stiffened as she approached. "Ms. Holt, you shouldn't be here without an appointment," he stammered. She placed a thick file on his desk. "I found 8 complaints about Captain Bradley Knox. None were addressed." Jacob swallowed. HR investigated everything thoroughly." She opened the folder. One by one, she laid out passenger statements. Black passengers being moved, humiliated, patronized, flight attendants reporting verbal harassment, pilots mentioning manipulated safety justifications. Every report ended with the same typed phrase. "Case closed. No action required." Jacob's voice cracked. "We didn't have enough evidence to pursue disciplinary." Amara cut him off, calm but razor sharp. "Evidence was sitting in your inbox. Evidence was crying in these reports. Evidence was in the patterns you ignored." He blinked rapidly, flustered. "We rely heavily on the captain's account. Senior pilots have institutional trust." "Senior pilots like Knox?" she asked. He nodded once, not realizing he was burying himself. "And what about trusting the black passengers who filed these complaints? Did they not count?" Jacob froze. His silence was the answer. Her fury became ice. "You created a culture where their pain was paperwork, and their dignity was disposable." She left the folder on his desk, turning without another word. Jacob sat trembling. Amara didn't need a confession. She needed a revolution. Next, she headed to public relations, the same department that had tried to control her narrative last night. The department head, Marlene Peters, looked up from her laptop, visibly startled. "Ms. Holt, we weren't expecting you." "You weren't expecting me to return," Amara corrected. "You assumed your statement would silence me." Marlene's face flustered. "We only drafted a protective outline. Nothing finalized." "You drafted a lie," Amara said bluntly. She tossed another file onto the conference table, screenshots, emails, internal memos, telling staff to discourage passengers from posting footage, instructions for how to frame disruptive behavior in press releases. Then the worst one, a PR memo suggesting that accusations of racial bias should be preemptively denied to protect brand image. Marlene's hands shook. We did what we thought was best to avoid controversy. Amara leaned forward slowly. By protecting a racist pilot who humiliates black passengers? By silencing victims? By doubling down on his lies? Marlene blinked in horror as she realized this was a systemic indictment. "We had no idea." "You had every idea," Amara snapped. "You just didn't care." And now the silence she left behind was the kind that comes after an explosion. Next, she entered the pilot's dispatch lounge, where off-duty pilots gathered, drank coffee, and exchanged rumors like currency. Conversations died instantly. A young black pilot, maybe 28, straightened in his seat as she approached. His eyes flicked nervously to the others. She spoke softly. "Have you ever reported Captain Knox?" He hesitated, then nodded, very slightly. A female pilot nearby stiffened, then lowered her voice. "We all know Knox targets black passengers, but every time someone complains the union protects him, HR closes the case. Management doesn't want trouble. Another pilot chimed in quietly. It's been happening for years. He says they never fight back, and no one stops him. Amara's voice trembled, not with fear but with rage held by self-control. He will be stopped, she said. The young black pilot looked relieved, almost emotional. Please, whoever you are, don't give up. She smiled sadly. I don't intend to. By noon, Amara had gathered enough evidence to expose a full-scale pattern of systemic discrimination. Not accidental, not occasional. A culture protected by silent HR, complicit PR union shielding leadership fear, and pilots too intimidated to speak. And at the rotten center of it all, a man who believed himself untouchable because the system had made him that way. Captain Bradley Knox wasn't an outlier. He was the product of the system, a system she built. And now she understood the truth she didn't want to face. If the system is corrupted, the only way to fix it is to tear it down yourself. Her mother's voice echoed again in her mind, soft but powerful. When the foundation is cracked, you rebuild, not with anger, but with truth. Amara inhaled deeply. Truth was coming, and this time, no one would bury it. She walked toward the elevator with renewed fire in her steps. Scene 4 had given her the answer she needed. She wasn't fighting one man. She was fighting an entire culture, which meant her next move had to be bigger than any of them expected, and she knew exactly where to begin. By sunrise the next morning, Amara Holt had reached a level of clarity she hadn't felt in months. Not since before her mother passed. Not since the weight of grief dulled the sharpness of her instincts. Now that sharpness had returned like a blade freshly forged. The headquarters conference hall, a wide, glass-walled space overlooking the runway, sat empty as Amara stood in the center of it, arms folded, jaw set, the morning light slicing across her face. This room had hosted board meetings, training seminars, and safety briefings. But today, it would become something else, the battlefield where truth would stand up in daylight. Amara placed her hands on the long wooden table, feeling the grain beneath her palms, grounding herself. This was where everything would change. Her assistant, Devin, one of the few people in the company who knew her real position, entered the room quietly. "Good morning, Miss Holt." She turned. Devin, early 30s, black, sharp-minded with a calm presence, had been with her since the first year of the airline's founding. "You reviewed everything?" Amara asked. He nodded solemnly. "Yes, it's worse than we thought. Knox's behavior, HR's cover-ups, PR's manipulation, it's systemic, deep." Amara didn't flinch. "I know." Devin hesitated, then asked, "Are you ready to go public?" She looked out across the runway, where planes moved like quiet giants through morning fog. "Not yet. Not until I prepare the stage." She turned back to him. "Gather the people we trust, the ones with integrity. We're setting an emergency safety meeting." Devin blinked. "You mean today?" "Today," she said firmly. "No delays. The longer we wait, the more they scramble to hide." He nodded, determination mirroring hers. They moved to a smaller private conference room where Amara laid out the full spread of evidence. Passenger complaints, suppressed reports, video footage, audio recordings, HR's closed cases, PR's manipulation memos, pilot testimonies, anonymous whistleblower messages. When the loyal executives arrived, 6 of them, diverse in age and background, they entered quietly, exchanging uneasy glances. They didn't know the scandal, they didn't know her plan, but they trusted her. Amara spoke with a steady voice. "What you're about to see will change everything you know about this company." Then she pressed play. Footage of Knox berating passengers, reports marked closed without action, whispers of discrimination from employees, patterns that were too obvious to deny. With each clip, the room grew heavier. By the 5th video, one executive rubbed her temples and whispered, Oh my God. By the 8th, another man muttered, "This is criminal." Amara stood silently, letting them feel the weight of the truth. Finally, she spoke. "This is the culture we inherited while grieving, distracted, or trusting the wrong people. This is what grew beneath us. And now, it ends." They looked at her, shocked. "Ms. Holt," one executive began carefully, "this will shake the entire company. The union will fight it. PR will resist. The board might panic." Amara nodded. "I'm counting on that. But we're not acting from fear. We're acting from righteousness." She opened her mother's Bible, resting it gently on the table. "When I was a child," she said quietly, "my mother taught me this: learn to do right, seek justice, correct oppression." Isaiah 1:17. The verse settled over the room like a call to arms. Amara lifted her chin. "This isn't revenge, this is justice, and we will correct what's been allowed for far too long." Devin projected the next slide on the screen. Emergency safety seminar, mandatory attendance. One executive frowned. "A safety seminar? That's going to confuse them." Amara smiled slightly. "That's the point. If we call it an ethics inquiry, PR will try to stop it. If we call it a disciplinary review, Knox will get a lawyer. But if we call it a safety seminar..." Devin finished for her. "Everyone shows up, unprepared, unguarded." Amara nodded. "And when they walk into that room, they'll walk straight into the truth." The room fell silent, shocked, impressed. Another executive asked gently, "And you'll be speaking as the owner?" For a moment, emotion flickered across Amara's face. "Not yet," she said softly. "First, they will see the truth unraveled. Then, I will reveal who I am." "And Knox?" someone asked. A quiet, controlled fire entered her voice. "He will stand before the entire company," she said, "and watch his lies collapse." As the executives left to begin preparations, Amara lingered alone in the glass-walled room. The runway outside buzzed with life, jets lifting, engines humming, sunlight warming the tarmac. She placed her hand on her mother's Bible. "Mom, I'm doing this for every person who ever felt small," she whispered. "For everyone silenced, for everyone pushed aside." A warm breeze slipped through the small gap in the window frame, brushing her cheek like a gentle hand. For a moment, she let herself close her eyes. Strength didn't mean the absence of fear. Strength meant acting anyway. She exhaled deeply. Then she walked out of the room with purpose. Today, she would step out of the shadows. Tomorrow, the entire world would know her name. And Knox, the man who thought he could erase her, would soon learn who held the real power on his plane. If you've ever had to fight a battle quietly before stepping into the light, then what Amara does next will make your heart race. Don't forget to like and subscribe and stay with Dignity Voices to follow her journey. Knox fights back, but Amara is 3 steps ahead. Captain Bradley Knox walked into headquarters the next morning with the smug swagger of a man who believed the world still bent around him. His sunglasses hung from the open collar of his uniform, his walk loud and unapologetic. Boots striking the marble floor like he owned it. He didn't know he was walking into the beginning of his end, but he could feel something shifting. Whispers, stares, executives glancing at him, then glancing away. Knox smiled. Attention always fueled him. He strode straight into the pilot dispatch lounge, tossed his jacket on a chair, and announced to the room, "All right, people, corporate called an emergency meeting. My guess? Someone finally wants to congratulate me for keeping yesterday's incident under control." A few pilots looked down at their coffees. Some exchanged awkward glances. No one laughed with him. Knox frowned. "What? Too early for jokes?" Silence answered him. He marched to the union office, irritation growing. Inside, the union rep, a heavy-set man named Walters, looked up, startled. "Bradley, just the guy I needed to see." Knox grinned. "Finally, someone who appreciates my professionalism." Walters cleared his throat. "We heard about the incident yesterday. PR reached out. HR sent notes. Knox leaned back in satisfaction. Good, because I handled that situation perfectly. Walters shifted uncomfortably. About that, they're calling a mandatory safety seminar. Entire staff. Today. Knox snorted. So, I've sat through 100 of those. Walters hesitated, lowering his voice. This one might be related to you. Knox lifted his chin. Then you'll defend me, right? Walters nodded slowly. The union always defends its own. Knox smirked. There it was, his shield, the thing that kept him untouchable for years. He clapped Walters on the shoulder. Relax, this'll blow over. It always does. Always. Next, Knox stormed into PR. Marlene Peters, the same director who tried to suppress Amara's truth, looked pale, jittery. Captain Knox, we're preparing for the seminar, she said quietly. We advise that you refrain from speaking to any media. Knox laughed in her face. Media? Please, I'm the hero in this story. Marlene's expression tightened. Not everyone sees it that way. Knox's voice sharpened. What are you saying, Marlene? She swallowed. There are rumors that management is evaluating the incident again. Knox stepped closer, towering over her. I wrote the report. I control the narrative. HR backs me. The union backs me. And you released the preliminary statement, didn't you? Calling her a disruptive passenger? Marlene's voice cracked. We had to. Knox jabbed a finger toward her. Exactly. Which means this little seminar. It's nothing. But the tremble in Marlene's hands suggested otherwise. Meanwhile, Amara Holt stood in the production room behind the conference hall, watching technicians set up the screens, audio feeds, and live stream equipment. Rows of chairs filled the auditorium. Every department, every rank, every pilot, every attendant, all required no exceptions. Her executives moved efficiently under Devon's guidance, checking wires, lining up the footage, organizing evidence. She watched them quietly, her posture straight, her expression unreadable. This was no longer a meeting. It was a reckoning. And today, Knox would face truth in front of every eye he had ever looked down on. When Knox arrived at the auditorium doors, he paused to look at the massive stage setup. 3 giant screens, a full sound system, a panel of seats, cameras for internal broadcast, executives seated at the front. Knox let out a low whistle. Wow, he muttered. All this for me? Should have brought popcorn. A passing flight attendant flinched at the remark. Knox brushed past, planting himself confidently in the front row. He didn't sit in the pilot section. No, he sat right in the VIP seats, legs stretched, arms folded. He was ready for applause. He was about to receive the opposite. Minutes before the seminar began, Marlene and Jacob, PR and HR, rushed up to Knox, faces stiff with panic. Bradley, Jacob whispered urgently. Listen carefully. You need to stay quiet today. Knox laughed. Why? You said HR backed my report. Jacob's voice wavered. We didn't expect so much evidence to surface. Knox blinked. What evidence? Marlene whispered. Passengers, employees, video, audio. Knox stiffened. Impossible. I made sure. He stopped himself. Marlene shook her head. It's bad, Bradley. Really bad. Knox's jaw tensed. And who's behind this? The woman from yesterday? That? Jacob grabbed his arm. Don't finish that sentence. Knox yanked his hand away. She's nobody. Jacob exchanged a terrified glance with Marlene. You'll want to hold on to that thought, Jacob whispered, because you're about to find out exactly who she is. The room darkened. The crowd quieted. The screens shifted from the airline logo to a black background. Amara stepped onto the stage. Not in a plain sweater now, but in a sharp navy suit, hair pulled back, eyes steady and unbreakable. Gasps murmured across the room, a ripple of recognition from those who had seen her humiliated on yesterday's flight. But Knox froze. Color drained from his face. That's, he whispered. Her? Devin stepped to the podium. "Ladies and gentlemen, please rise for our founder and owner, Ms. Amara Holt." The entire auditorium jolted as if struck by lightning. Amara Holt? The billionaire owner? The woman Knox called your kind? The woman he forced to the back of her own plane? Knox's mouth hung open, then snapped shut, then opened again. His shield, his arrogance, his union, his manipulation, all cracked in an instant. Amara held the microphone with calm hands. "Good morning," she said. "Let's talk about safety. But not the kind you're used to." The screens behind her flickered, and Knox felt the first real fear he had felt in decades. Today, the truth would be louder than his lies. The auditorium felt like the inside of a held breath, thick, unmoving, stretched to the breaking point. Every seat was filled, every eye was locked on the stage, and every heartbeat seemed to sync with the click of Amara Holt's heels as she stepped toward the podium. She didn't need a spotlight. She was the spotlight. Her navy suit caught the soft white overheads, her posture tall, unshakable. The weight of grief, betrayal, humiliation, and righteous fury shaped every line of her face, but not a single piece of her looked defeated. This was a woman who had endured the fire. Now she walked directly into its center, carrying the truth. Behind her, 3 massive screens glowed black, waiting for her command. In the front row, Captain Bradley Knox sat frozen, jaw clenched, hands twitching, breath shallow. The woman he had humiliated, degraded, slandered, written lies about was not a powerless passenger. She was his boss's boss's boss. She was the owner, and she was done being silent. Amara lifted the microphone. "Good morning," she said, her voice calm, but carrying the weight of a hammer. "Today we are here to discuss safety." Her eyes locked directly onto Knox. Not the safety of planes, the safety of people. The room stilled. "Safety," she continued, "is not just a checklist, not just a manual. Safety begins with dignity. Without dignity, no one in this company is safe." A low murmur rippled through the crowd. Amara inhaled deeply and allowed a moment of silence. Then she pressed a button on the podium. The screens lit up. A video played, from a cell phone, from her flight. Knox ordering her to move, his voice dripping with contempt, his racist phrasing sharp and undeniable. "People like you sit in the back. You don't belong in this aisle. Smart girl, knowing your place." The room gasped as the humiliation unfolded, frame by frame. Knox shot to his feet. "This is taken out of context. She... Amara raised one hand, palm outward. He faltered, then sat. She continued. "This video was recorded on Flight 382 yesterday. Many of you have seen it online. More of you witnessed it firsthand." Marlene from PR looked like she might faint. Jacob from HR slid down in his chair. Amara tapped the screen again. Another video played, then another, then another. Black passengers being moved for balance. Black families being separated due to seat assignments. Black teenagers being told to stop blocking the aisle. Black elders being told they didn't look like priority travelers. Every single incident. With Captain Bradley Knox. Gasps filled the room. Hands covered mouths. Someone whispered, "Oh my God." Amara didn't flinch. Next, documents flashed onto the screens. Pages of complaints stamped closed, signed off, dismissed. "Here are 8 years of passenger and employee reports," Amara said. "All dismissed by HR, all minimized, all ignored." Jacob trembled visibly. Knox muttered under his breath, "This is a witch hunt." Amara turned toward him. "No, Captain Knox. A witch hunt involves hunting the innocent." She stepped closer to the edge of the stage. "This is accountability." The audience erupted into whispers. Next, anonymous staff recordings played. "I saw him harass a passenger. He targets black customers. We're afraid to speak up. HR never acts. He manipulates safety rules." Knox jumped up again. "This is slander. I kept order on my flights." Amara met his eyes. No, you kept a hierarchy where cruelty went unchecked. He flinched at her words like they were physical blows. Amara placed her mother's Bible gently on the podium. I built this company, she said quietly. From nothing. My mother worked 2 jobs so I could go to school. She taught me that every person has worth, that every seat in life should be earned by character, not skin color. She paused. Her voice softened but did not weaken. And she taught me this verse. No weapon formed against you shall prosper. Isaiah 54:17. The room fell absolutely silent. Even Knox stopped breathing. Amara's eyes lifted, fierce and unshakable. Yesterday, Captain Knox tried to humiliate me. He weaponized authority. He weaponized lies. He weaponized a broken system. She placed her hand on the Bible. But my mother taught me that weapons made of hatred eventually turn back on those who forged them. She turned toward her board of executives seated in the front row. As owner of this airline, I am exercising full authority. Devon stepped beside her, holding a document. Amara continued. Effective immediately, Captain Bradley Knox is terminated from employment. His license will be reported for review. His union will be informed. A collective gasp. Knox shook his head violently. You can't do this. I've flown 30 years. I'm respected. Amara cut him off with one sharp sentence. Respect is not measured in years of flying, but in how you treat the lives entrusted to your care. Knox stood trembling, jaw spasming. You blindsided me, he whispered. Amara stepped closer. No, she said quietly. You blinded yourself. Security approached slowly, as if approaching a dangerous animal. Knox looked around wildly. You're all making a mistake. She's manipulating you. Remove him from the building, Amara ordered. And for the first time in decades, Bradley Knox was powerless. Security escorted him out, his voice echoing behind him, not in command, but in desperation. Amara turned back to the audience. HR leadership will be suspended pending investigation. PR directors who suppressed complaints will be removed today. All passenger complaints will be reopened and reinvestigated under my supervision. And beginning tomorrow, we rebuild our policies from the ground up. People stared at her with something more than respect, something deeper, hope, real, trembling hope. Amara lifted the microphone one last time. This company will not be built on fear, not on silence, not on discrimination. She gestured to the 3 screens. No more cover-ups, no more lies, no more victims. Her gaze swept the entire room. Every person who steps onto our planes deserves dignity, and I will ensure they receive it. A standing ovation rose around her like a tidal wave, row by row, department by department, pilots, attendants, mechanics, clerks, staff who had been silent for years. They stood for her courage, for truth, for change, and for the future she promised. Applause still echoed in the halls long after Captain Knox had been escorted out of the building. It lingered like a shifting wind, one that carried relief, hope, and something deeper, the sound of a company waking up. But for Amara Holt, the applause wasn't the ending. It was the beginning of the work that would rebuild everything that had been broken. She stepped outside the conference auditorium and onto the sunlit balcony overlooking the runway. Planes rolled across the tarmac like benevolent giants, symbols of possibility, freedom, and the future she had worked so hard to create. Devon joined her quietly at her side. You did it, he said softly. Amara shook her head. No, we started it. Now we finish it. She opened her tablet, pulling up the document titled Holt Airlines. Dignity First Protocol, New Implementation. Inside were the reforms she had dreamt of for years. Mandatory anti-bias training for all flight crews and corporate staff. All discrimination complaints reviewed directly by her office. Automatic access to cabin recordings whenever a passenger is moved. a new passenger dignity officer on every major flight, public transparency reports quarterly, a diverse leadership committee with actual authority, not token positions, anonymous employee hotline that bypassed HR entirely. Devin scanned the list, eyebrows lifting. "This will change everything," he said. Amara nodded. "That's the point." Later that afternoon, Amara addressed staff again, this time through a company-wide broadcast streamed to every airport lounge, office, break room, and cockpit. She stood before a camera, shoulders square. "To the passengers who were mistreated, to the employees silenced, to the staff who feared speaking truth, to the families who were harmed, I see you, I hear you, and I will not allow your stories to be buried again." Her voice softened, but did not break. This company apologizes, not with words alone, but with change. Effective today, Holt Airlines begins a new chapter, one where dignity is mandatory. Thousands of staff watching around the country felt a weight lift off their hearts, many for the first time in years. Messages began flooding into customer service. "I saw the video. Thank you for finally taking action. I was once moved because of balance, too. Thank you for speaking up. My grandmother was humiliated last year. This gives us hope. I fly Holt Airlines again starting today." Amara read dozens of them personally. She saw herself in every message, every voice trembling between anger and relief. And she understood exactly how much was at stake. By evening, Amara walked onto the runway where her mother once stood with her decades ago, pointing up at planes with eyes full of dreams. A warm wind brushed her hair. She could almost hear her mother whisper, "Keep going, baby. Make it right." She placed a hand on the fuselage of her flagship aircraft, freshly polished, repainted with updated branding. But this time she had added something new, a small engraved plaque beside the boarding door. It read, "Every flight carries a soul. Every soul carries worth." She traced the words with her fingertip, breath catching softly. Tomorrow, passengers would pass by this plaque without knowing she placed it there herself, but they would feel what it stood for: dignity, respect, safety, justice, and worth. Equal worth. As twilight settled, Devin approached again. "You ready to head home?" Amara smiled gently. "For the first time in months." "Yes." Devin hesitated. "Amara, do you realize what you did today?" She stared at the runway lights flickering to life. "I didn't win," she said softly. "I just set things right." He nodded. "And people will remember this moment for years." She didn't answer. Instead, she looked up at the night sky. A plane soared overhead, its engines humming a steady, reassuring song. And she whispered into the wind, "For you, Mom. For everyone who felt small." The wind carried her words away, but the truth of them stayed glowing inside her chest. Justice wasn't loud. It wasn't glamorous. It was steady, patient, unshakable. And tonight, justice had finally taken its rightful seat. The story of Amara Holt is more than a confrontation. It is a reminder that some battles are fought quietly, long before they are won publicly. Many of us have faced moments where we were silenced, humiliated, or dismissed. Moments where powerful people twisted truth. Moments where systems protected the wrong voice. But God reminds us, the Lord will fight for you. You need only to be still. Exodus 14:14. Stillness doesn't mean doing nothing. Stillness means holding your dignity when others try to strip it away. Stillness means letting truth anchor you until the moment you rise. Amara's courage didn't start on the stage. It started when she sat alone beside the airplane bathroom, gripping her Bible. It started in humiliation and ended in justice. And for anyone watching this, your worth is not determined by where people try to place you. Your worth is determined by God, and He never puts you in the back. If this story moved you, inspired you, or reminded you of your own strength. Like, subscribe, and stay with Dignity Voices for more stories that uplift, challenge, and shine God's truth into real moments of injustice. Your voice matters. Your seat matters. Your dignity matters.